Hello and welcome to our homestead. Today on our homestead we're going to be picking up where I left off with our first video, talking about this wonderful book called New Clothes from Old by Gloria R. Mosesson, and I believe it was published in the 1970s. I don't think it's in print anymore, but if you ever see a copy of this, you want to get one, because in this book she talks about using old pieces of fabric, even from your closet, and turning them into creative things around the house. So you save money and you have your you also get to be creative by taking something apart and making something else. I have these little lampshades and I have two chandeliers. They call them chandeliers, but I don't think of them that way. They have 5 lights on the top, and each one I've put this little lampshade. And it may be hard to see in this video, but these lampshades have gotten dingy and they're speckled and spotted just from age, you know, from being up there. And they were never covered, they were just meant to be covered, but I never did. So what I thought I would do is, I have yards and yards of this fabric. This fabric has chickens on it, and they're black, and they have red flowers and yellow sunflowers and things like that. And I love the colors. It goes with my house. As you can see in the background, I have lots of blue gingham, and I use neckerchiefs. I have red neckerchiefs. For some of them are used for curtains. I use them for pillows, a variety of things. I have all kinds of stuff like that. And these pieces of fabrics just come, sometimes people give me things, and sometimes I find things real cheap at the thrift stores, and I think I might have been given this one, but I just love this print. So I have about a half a yard of it, and I have taken it, and we're going to look at it in a little bit when I actually put the project together. But I'm going to be covering these with this fabric. Now, not this strip, of course, it's too thin for this particular shade. But I'm going to be covering these with this fabric, and then using the edges of what was left after I used the neckerchiefs to make curtains, and I'm going to be using those for trim on the bottom. So I'm going to have red piping on the bottom and red piping on the top. I'm going to be using Aleene's tacky glue, a pair of scissors, an iron, my shades, and this fabric, and we're going to see how it comes out. So I'll be back in a little bit and we will get started with this project. Okay, here we are with our pattern. I want to explain how I made this pattern. It's really not difficult to do. You can use any kind of paper. If you want to cover something like this, you can use any kind of paper at all. I used parchment paper because it's what I had on hand. But you could use wrapping paper. You could use paper from a paper bag. Any kind of place that you get paper. In fact, if it's small enough, you could even use a magazine. But what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to look for where the seam is, okay, and I'm going to place that seam. What I did is, of course, I rolled out my paper, so I was doing this on a big piece of paper. And you can see where the seam is. I'm just crossing it over about a ½ an inch, okay? And then that's what I did when I laid it down to trace it in the first place. And then I just continued rolling my lampshade, and I continued marking along as I was rolling it like this. And that's how I made a pattern, and I made sure that I went all the way over and gave myself excess room, so that when I put this pattern on top of the lampshade, it's going to lap over about ½ an inch, wrap around, and then it's going to come back and wrap around. So I'm going to be able to glue it in place and have about maybe a ½ inch over the itself, okay? This is a neat little ruler that my husband's grandmother gave to me many years ago when she was teaching me some techniques about sewing. So I like to use this one. It has good numbers, and I can see it very easily. So I marked off an inch all along the bottom and along the top to make sure that I had 1 inch evenly all the way around. And then that way I knew that my trim pieces would be that size. So what I did was, when I cut my trim pieces, which you can see here on a piece that I've already sewn together, okay, the trim pieces are actually 1 inch in width. So I cut those pieces. I actually used this as my pattern. And what I did is I just laid my paper over the top, and I traced underneath it onto the red fabric. But what I need, I want to suggest this to you because I had a little bit of problems in the sewing part. I want to recommend that you go ahead and cut your trim pieces about 1 inch longer than what you have measured here. This gives you a little bit of playing room because when it's sewn, depending on where you cut those trim pieces from whatever scrap you have, if it's on the bias or not on the bias, it's either going to stretch or not stretch and affect your sewing. So I would recommend that you go ahead and give yourself an extra inch, and that way you have plenty of playing room. This paper is transparent, and that's what I like about the parchment paper, especially with this project, so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to, let me get something heavy over here to hold this fabric for me. There we go. I'm going to find some chickens that are right side up because they're going to be dancing around this pattern on my lamps. And the reason I picked this particular fabric also is because it is, I put the color up on the light to just see what it looked like, and I could actually see through it nicely. It actually was very close to the color that this lamp already is. So it's going to give me kind of a golden glow in the room. If I wanted to have a red glow, I might use fabric that's red or blue. You know, you'd want to do that to affect the room. But we have a lot of brown and gold in our house, so I thought I would use it that way. Okay, I have these chickens, and most of them are upright. I think I'm going to move it a little bit because I want to have them more situated right in the middle of the pattern. So what I'm going to do is once I get my pattern where I want it to be, I will of course trace this pattern onto here, cut out this piece, and lay it aside. So I need to do 10 of those because I have 2 chandeliers and 5 lamps on each chandelier. And so I'm going to do that. Then after I do that, I'm going to take that piece and I'm going to glue it on at the top and the bottom and on the seam to actually have my lampshade, and then we'll go from there. Now, I've cut out my chicken piece of fabric here, which is some fabric I believe a friend gave to me and I really, really like. And now we're going to do that work that I was talking about, cutting out the piece of fabric here. I have a little stain right here because this is an old sheet. I bought this sheet from Goodwill, and I think I paid all of $2 for it. And I've already used it for lots and lots of other projects, and I just love this color. It's a beautiful rusty red, and it matches perfectly with the flowers in this chicken pattern. So I'm using a chalk pencil, and what I'm doing is I'm going to outline my piece right here and go down about 1 inch on either side. And then I'm going to do the same on the bottom here. So I'm going to trace down and go about 1 inch. Now I'm not worried about the fabric in between here and there. I'm not going to waste it. I'm actually going to come back and make some more of these little arches like this. I am extremely conservative on my fabrics, and I will stretch that fabric as much as I possibly can and get every little inch out of it. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to continue marking this, and then I'm going to come back and cut it. Now while I'm doing this marking, I just wanted to chat a bit about where you can get your fabrics from. Remember, we talked about in the first video when I was showing you the book that you should go to your closet or around your house, look for old things, and the fun part about this is you're going to get your materials from places that you would least expect. You're going to repurpose your materials. I wanted to show you this measuring tool. My husband's grandmother gave this to me early in our marriage about 30 years ago, and I absolutely love this tool. It has a little sliding marker. I don't know if you have one of these or if you've ever seen them, but they have this little fun sliding marker. I don't know if you can see that point on the top. And so you just move it to what inch you want. So right now I'm going to move it to about 1 inch, and what I'm going to do is mark it at that little arrow right there that we had, and I'm going to continue around. So we were talking about fabric. Okay, so you're going to go into your closet and you're going to look around the house, and you are going to find things that you might have thrown out. You might have thought, well, I don't fit in this anymore. Maybe somebody in your family's getting rid of something, and you might be just looking at it as something that needs to go to, you know, to be given away or thrown away. But look at it carefully, because, like for instance, if you have an old t-shirt, you can turn that t-shirt into string, and you can use that string to crochet with, or you can use it out in the garden. You can also use things like this. Old sheets might be stained up, but maybe there's parts around it that you can use for other fabrics. This would be a great backing for a quilt. That's originally what I bought it for, but I've had so many other projects since that I have just enjoyed making other projects with the same fabric. So I'm using it for trim colors and for the backs of pillows and different things like that. So you'll see now how I'm just taking my marks and I'm continuing to just bring them around into this arch, and now that's my piece that I'm going to use on the top of the shade as my trim piece. And I'm going to continue doing that down here and doing that for my my piece that's going to go on the bottom. And while I'm doing this, I wanted to just mention that you should look at those garments and also think about taking the buttons off or the strings. I take the shoestrings off of my old shoes before I throw them out. If I have some old tennis shoes and they're just really reached the end of their life, and I throw them into the washing machine, and now I've got strings for a variety of things. And those shoestrings wash beautifully in the washing machine. I put them inside of a net bag that you might put hosiery in. I wash them with the whites and they come out great, or if they're black or whatever color you have. So you always want to be thinking about repurposing buttons, zippers, latches, just all sorts of things. In fact, you can even do the same thing with shoes. Think of how you might be able to use something off of those shoes, the straps or the buckles. And then it becomes very exciting, because it is a very creative process of shopping in your own house and repurposing those items. And I just find it extremely exhilarating when I can find something and repurpose it. So I'm going to continue to connect the dots here. I'll cut out these pieces and we'll be back in a moment after I sew them together. I realized that I missed a step, and I wanted to work through this with you so we would both see it together. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark up about, I guess about 1/4 of an inch. And so I'm going to make a mark like this all the way around, okay? And as I make that 1/4 inch mark all the way around, I'm going to take this, and look, you do not want to sew it on this way, not in the same shape as you already have. You actually want to flip that over. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it on the opposite way. So instead of having it sewn on with the arch, we're going to be sewing it against the arch. So we're going to pin this on at that 1/4 inch mark. And we're going to do that all the way around. And then I'm going to take it to the machine and sew it. And I just want to mention this because I didn't want to cause confusion. The reason why I'm sewing it up a little high is so that when it's finished sewing, I'm going to have some fabric there, and that stitch will be right up against the edge and it will turn, and we'll see that in just a minute. Let me show you that again. It'll turn, and so we'll have some red just right here. So we want to make sure that we give ourselves about 1/4 of an inch right there on that pinning, okay? And so I'm going to take that to the machine in just a moment, and I'll show you right here, like this, and I'm going to continue around to do it at 1/4 inch. It's going to be a little strange at first because it's not going to match the arch exactly, but we're going to do it this way, and then when we flip, we're going to see how nicely it works. And while I'm talking about this, I did not see this done somewhere. This is just something that I figured out on my own. And the idea here is the more projects that you do, the more you think. And that's why we are making videos of these projects, because we want to inspire you to think. That's the whole thing. See, in the past, we have just, well, our ancestors did everything this way. They made a lot of their own things that they used around the house. But over the years, over the generations, we have lost a lot of those skills, especially we as women who have gone to work to support our families and things like that. We've lost a lot of skills about sewing and different types of projects around the house that women would have done, making their own soap, you know, different things like that. And so we like to do is we like to think about how things are made and then come up with our own plan. And here, we are trying to think of that. And so looking at this lampshade, I just thought about how I could make it, and now I'm making a pattern. I'm going to make it work, okay? And so I am not a fabulous seamstress by any stretch of the imagination. I just like to make stuff. I always have since I was a little girl, and I like to figure out ways to make things happen. I don't like accepting the word no. I want to figure out how to do it. So that's what we're going to do here, and we're going to see how this works together. So let me finish pinning this, and then I'm going to take it to the machine and bring it back when it's time to flip. Okay, so I pinned it. I marked it first. I pinned it, and then I went ahead and I sewed my 1/4 inch on this side and on this side. And you can see I kept my seam very close to the edge, okay? So I wanted all the red that I could get. And then right here I have already ironed this piece down right here, and so I've got a nice flat seam. I'm really liking the way it looks. And then I'm going to overlap by about a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to glue this down later on. And so I'm already looking at what it looks like, and I really like it. It's definitely turning out like I wanted. I just wanted a thin piping on the bottom so that I have a little snap of red on the bottom and the top. So I'm going to continue to go press this, and then we'll be back to glue it on. Okay, now I just have a small amount of glue in here because I don't want a lot, because it just dries too fast. I may even have to renew that in just a few minutes. Okay, and now what we're going to do, just again, a quick look at what our finished product is going to look like. I forgot to mention you want to have a pair of scissors handy because we want to measure this, and once we get it tacked up, we want to trim off the top and make it even. We want to trim off the bottom edges and make it even. Now you're not going to trim directly to the edge of the lamp shade. You're going to want to trim to where you have a little bit turned over on the inside, okay? And so you want to try to make that look as even as possible, because when you're walking underneath your lampshade, you want to have a nice look from the inside as well as from the outside. Okay, so now I wanted to also mention that my lampshade, as you can see, is not in the best of condition. It's really beginning to dry rot. I'm not concerned about that. I just peeled off what was loose, and I'm going to begin my work from there. Now, you may find this interesting. I really could use a smaller bottle because I tried 2 different ways. I tried brushing on the glue, but honestly, you need to get a good bit of glue onto this project in order to make it really stick and set up well. So I'm going to start from the edge. Originally, I tried starting from the center and working my way out. It was a disaster. So it just didn't work well at all. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to get a line of glue here, and I'm going to apply it right to the edge. And you want to make sure to be fairly liberal. I mean, not crazy, but liberal enough that it's really going to set up quickly. And you want to just eyeball it and try to get your fabric right over that spot. Okay? And we want to line it up as best as possible. And at first, it's going to look like, it may even look like it's not going to work at all, but it is. You're just going to manipulate, and in the end, it's going to be beautiful. I've already done 5 of these lampshades, and it's hanging in my living room on my chandelier, and it's adorable. We love it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a few minutes, let this tack up pretty good, and get a nice hold on there because I'll start pulling on it, okay? So let's take a break, and we'll be right back. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes, and I already have a good tack on there. So I'm going to continue on with my project. And what I will do is just now I will put a nice bead of glue along the top and along the bottom. And I'll just continue doing that all the way around. So I'll put a little there, a little at the top, a little at the bottom. I try to make it about the same distance out. I'll lay it over. And I begin to stretch. And I'm feeling it with my thumb and trying to line up the trim, so that I have a nice trim over here, you can just pull on that trim every so often and see about how it's lining up, okay? And so you want to pull it that way, and you want to pull it this way, and we will pull from all different directions as you go, and the fabric is going to stretch. The glue will hold it into place, and you'll start getting a really nice fit on this lampshade. So you're just going to manipulate, and you'll see my fingers are already starting to get messy, and that's the purpose for this damp paper towel, okay? And so we continue. Don't fret if you get glue on your fabric, because when we're done, that glue may make a little white residue, but we're going to continue to just use a damp cloth and clean it off, and you'll be amazed because it'll come off really easily. Okay, we continue to go. Let's do another section here. And lay it over. Again, we stretch, measure to make sure that we're getting a nice fit at the top and the bottom. Pull it as you need to, and also pull from this direction so that you're getting a nice stretch, a nice fit all the way around with your fabric. It's very forgiving, and especially if you're not an incredible seamstress like I'm not, you may get kind of bumpy seams where your fabric is more taut in one area than it is in another. Just go ahead and continue to stretch. I would think this would be a really fun activity for a girl's room, and for if you have a young teenage daughter or a young adult daughter that is trying to fix up a room or an apartment, I would think this would be a fun way to do it using recycled things. Okay, and we'll continue on. I'm going to continue on all the way around until I get to my stopping point, and at that point we'll stop and we'll go over the next part. So let's continue. Now here we are getting close to the end of the back end, and I just want to mention I'm going to go ahead and put a bead right here and overlap my pieces, begin to close that gap. I wanted to just mention while I'm doing this, this is not the kind of project that a perfectionist is going to love, because it is so imperfect. I'm not turning under my edges. You might want to do that. I just try to line up as best I can my seam in the back. And I just find that, you know, years ago I used to be a perfectionist. I was very type A personality. I just drove myself crazy with trying to make things perfect. And in the long run, it just didn't matter. I noticed that people didn't notice my imperfections, and I was spending so much time trying to be perfect that I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing, and I was causing myself a great deal of unneeded stress. So especially now, having a homestead, a family business, having been a homeschool mom, and I'm still very active in working with my son on his college education and encouraging him, and you know, there just isn't a lot of time to be perfect about such things. And so I just try to do the best that I can, and I'm also doing a lot of different things all at one time. So the important thing is, when you look at the whole picture, does it make you happy? Does it feel good in your home? Is your family enjoying it? I do like to do a good job. I want my home to be clean and healthy and nice, attractive for my family so that they feel comfortable in it. And I do love for it to have touches of our family and things that we enjoy. But at the same time, I'm not going to be a perfectionist anymore. So you might have a crinkle here or there like I do right here, and you might want to work extra hard to get it out, and that's entirely up to you, and you can work as much on it as you'd like. But I just wanted to mention that it's not necessary to be perfect on everything you do. What's important is to do the best that you can and enjoy doing it. And your joy will come out in what you create. Okay? And so now we're ready to trim. So that took probably about 5 to 10 minutes to get that part done. And you might want to trim off any excess fabric. I'll have a little piece of black rooster fabric coming through there. So I'll trim that, and I'll also trim these edges. Now my husband always gets amazed that I can just eyeball things like this. You might want to measure it, but for me, generally, I can see pretty well what a straight line. Okay, so here we are. I just eyeballed it and I trimmed it while we were chatting. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to start gluing down on the inside. I don't know if you can see, but right on the rim, I'm going to put a bead all the way around the rim. And I'm going to start turning in the trim piece over the top of that, and it is going to get really, really messy. If you like to work with glue and messy things, this is the project for you, because this is a really messy project. You could also use hot glue if you want to, but I was a little concerned about these lampshades now. I'm hoping that it's just going to dry the tacky glue more and more while it's up there, but I was a little concerned about putting hot glue up there, thinking about how hot these lampshades will get, and look, put a little piece of tack between your two edges there so you can make sure you glue those down. I just didn't want the glue to start coming unglued when it gets hot up there. Okay, and you're going to start turning now. So you're going to turn those edges under and squeeze, because that glue is going to squeeze through the bottom there and come out the other side, and it's going to help you to hold down your project really well on the inside. Okay, so there's my underside. Now, where does the spoon come in? Okay, well, here's a spoon. See, I have to wipe off on that paper towel again. And here comes the spoon. Now, you may look at my edge and go, oh, she's got more trim in one area and less in another. Well, you know what the beauty of doing a project at home is? The beauty is it's handmade. And so when it's handmade, you don't worry so much about all of those things. That's the beauty of it. That's what makes it unique and special, and it's your touch. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I am putting the spoon on the inside, and it's going to squeeze out. Let me see if I can get a better picture of this. It's going to squeeze out some of the glue, and I'm going to press, and I'm going to get all those edges pressed down and squeeze that glue out so that I have a nice squoze edge there, and it's going to be just as glued down as possible. So now what I'm going to do is take my rag and just gently wipe, and some of this residue will come off and some of it will not right now, but later on it will when it's dried. It will all come off. Okay, so there we go, and the next thing to do is the other side. I have finished the piece. It just took me a few more minutes off camera to finish gluing down the top, and here we are. So it's still wet, but it will dry overnight, and tomorrow I will use the rag to gently clean off any glue residue that I have that looks white and powdery. I have a little thread right here. But I also want to tell you that that what I'm really inspired about is the book that I originally shared with you in another video, and I think I did it at the beginning of this one, is this book, New Clothes from Old. It's just going through not only the clothing, but it inspired me to do that with all of my things. So I went through all of my things and looked for other ways that I could take old things or what I already had to make something work for what I wanted to have. So when you start looking that way, you're walking around your house and your house becomes the store. And it's really exciting because you are challenging yourself to figure out what you can do with what you already have. So while we go to this last, we're going to finish out the video by showing you the before and after. I just want to inspire you to continue to look around your home and find ways that you can make something old new again and do it in a creative way that is uniquely you. So long, my friends. See you next time.